This is Dan's professional practice. And someone's got a mic that's not muted, but I think that's Charles.
Sorry.
No problem. There's just a bit of an echo there. So the title of this presentation is Collaboration Teams, but it really should be Specialty Teams because that's what I'm going to talk about is specialty teams. And feel free to jump in any time if you either work on a specialty team or you work for a service that has a specialty team and you want to add any things, any comments. So there are a number of different paramedic subspecialties now, which is nice for change. And the purpose obviously is to meet the need of all patients, and there are a number of different incidents that require specialized training in order to accomplish that. And so some examples include hostage taking, where the traditional approach would endanger patients because it would mean that regular paramedics would have to stay a safe distance from the incident until police secured the entire scene. But we know now that, for example, in an active shooter situation, everybody dies in about the first 15 minutes. So it may not even be tactical teams going in, it may be the first paramedics on scene going in. I'm not aware of any service in Ontario that has a first on scene, first in response system, but in Kentucky and some other states they do, where the first, I believe it's first 4 police officers and first paramedics to arrive on scene go in a diamond formation, and with the medic sort of a semi-diamond, the medic in the back anyway, behind the police officers, and they hunt down the shooter, kill the shooter, and then the medic starts treating people. So tactical medics enter hostile situation under police cover and provide immediate care. The primary objective is to treat the police officer, not to treat victims. But if they come across a victim and there's something they can treat quickly, like applying a pressure dressing or a tourniquet or something like that, that's what they'll do. Excuse me. So special units got to meet a particular need, a niche, and the events have to have some probability of occurring. Now, there's some subspecialties like CBRN teams where the chance of a CBRN event are extremely slim, might be once in a career, if ever. But a service has to decide whether it's worth a justification just based on the probability or the possibility of that event occurring. And not every community will have the same needs. So, for example, a community where there's a significant train corridor or a significant highway corridor where hazard materials are transported, that community may need a hazmat team or a CBRN team for that reason. And some teams are unique to EMS. Other teams are part of an interagency partnership, like the Heavy Urban Search and Rescue is a team made up of police, fire, and paramedics. So tactical paramedics. Are any of you tactical medics? I know there's only 3 of you here. I'm assuming not. But, okay. Okay, so Charles, do they have do they have tactical medics where you live? Where you work?
It's been talked about for years, and there's been back and forth movement. Unfortunately, our management has proven a challenging partner for the police to negotiate with on that. But there is movement now the last couple of years, and they've actually just recently the service has sent one of my friends down to he's going down to Pennsylvania in a couple of weeks to do a tactical paramedics and course. It's a 5-week boot camp type of thing, and they've designated him as the official trainer for when it comes up. So we're getting there.
Oh, that's cool. Interesting. So, Chris, that's interesting where you work, that you need to be ACP. Where I work, it's PCP or ACP. So,
level 2 guy working tactical.
Oh yeah. Level 2 still exists, does it, in Toronto?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so
Unfortunately, a lot of the ACPs are dropping out because they don't like the ACP schedules, and level twos have better scheduling options.
really, interesting. Wow. So there are hundreds of SWAT teams now that use tactical medics, and the first one in Canada originated in Toronto in 1996. And so they provide closer support in operations with police operations with shootings, hostage takings, barricaded subjects, high risk warranty service. I know where I work that seems to be where tactical medics respond the most is the high risk warranty services where they're arresting someone. So I got a really noisy helicopter flying by my window here, and it's not the air ambulance. So without tactical medics, at least until recently in the parts of the U.S. anyway, victims would have to wait and sometimes would die from injuries that were salvageable. So, the Columbine High is an example where there were kids who were shot who had a venous bleed, something easy to control, but they were presumably so overwhelmed by the emotional event, they just didn't have the presence of mind to control their own bleeding and bled out because they stayed there for hours. And so tactical medics, they receive ballistics and weapons familiarization and training in Canada, but to my knowledge, there are no tactical medics in Canada that actually carry firearms, but they're trained to use them in the event that the officer that they're covering goes down, and they can unholster his weapon and use it to defend themselves. But they're not generally armed, at least here in Canada. Geez, there are 2 helicopters flying around here. That's unusual. So qualifications required to work as a tactical medic include physical fitness, exceptional good team player, and a lot of good medics are turned down by the tactical teams because they go through psychometric testing and an interview process. And while you can be a very good medic, you may not necessarily be a good team player. And a team player in a tactical situation requires following orders, which paramedics are generally not good at because we work independently. And so it's a whole different situation when you're in a tactical situation and you have to follow commands without question. When I remember years ago, I never worked as a tactical medic, but when I worked air ambulance, I was assigned to 2 U.S. presidents. The first one was Ronald Reagan, and we didn't really do anything. We just flew around the city, but we had a discussion with our manager, and the question was, what if he has a flesh wound, but his, I don't know, chief of staff, who's standing right next to him, has a sucking chest wound? Who do we carry? And we were told we carry the president because triage principles don't apply. You do what you're told. You follow orders, and that's just kind of the way it is. And, I guess partly because, when the president's at risk, there's a national security at risk as well. Excuse me. So I know some good medics who've been turned down for tactical teams, and that's after talking to them, I think that's why that they just it's hard to follow orders when you've been working independently for years. So there's a hierarchy of demand versus independence, and it takes a great deal of discipline to stay focused, and training focuses on high-risk environments, and this is differences between conventional operations have to be learned and practiced. Hang on a second, I have a bit of a cough coming here. So topics of training typically include tactical team operations, covert and concealment. Just out of curiosity, does anyone know, I didn't know this, I had to look it up when I was preparing this presentation. And this is actually taken from my book, The Canadian Paramedic. Does anyone know what cover and concealment means, what the difference is? Oh, hey, Andrew.
I imagine the cover would be, being behind something that would protect you from incoming fire, and concealment would be not being seen.
Yep, that's exactly right. That is exactly right. Trained in explosives and booby traps, and I don't know if you heard, it was a few years ago, tactical medics in Ottawa were doing an exercise with police, and an explosive went off, and a couple of medics were seriously hurt. I haven't heard, Andrew says, Charles plays a lot of Call of Duty. I haven't heard how those medics are doing. Has anyone heard how those Ottawa medics are doing? Okay. They also do training in clandestine drug operations, and there are a lot of clandestine drug operations in Ontario, in southern Ontario, and they're usually in middle-class homes, single homes around the city, and so they may be in your neighborhood that you're just unaware of. They're trained in polytechnics and chemical munitions, use of respirators as well, and use of less than lethal force, for example, taser, and crime scene preservation, of course, as well. Assessing, extricating, and managing injured people. We do tactical casualty care course here at Georgian every once in a while, and next time we offer one, I'll let you guys know. We'll probably post it on social media for people to come. The last one we had was quite a good success. We had over 20 people attending. It was quite good. And you don't have to be a tactical medic to take it, which is nice. So further subspecialization includes training for things like political protests, crowd situations, and riots, and other civil disturbances. And mass shootings in the U.S., clearly shown the need for tactical trained paramedics. Starting with, just going back here, starting with the Columbine High shooting. Many years ago, the Ontario Paramedic Association hosted a conference. I can't remember where it was now, but it might have actually been Thunder Bay. But Jeff Christ, who is the deputy chief of EMS for Columbine, was a keynote speaker, and he talked about the EMS experience at the Columbine High shooting. It was really quite a riveting talk. He had some 911 audio files and some video that the public had never seen before. And there was one situation, one event where this teenager had been shot and was paralyzed and crawled out of a window and dropped half a floor, not that far, maybe 5-6 feet to the ground, and the ambulance had parked fairly close to him, and the medics were behind the ambulance, and when they ran out to try to get this guy, they were shot at, and so they ran back for cover, and they basically just had to wait about 3 hours while they laid on their bellies looking underneath their ambulance at this kid who was lying face down looking at them for help and wasn't able to do anything. So MJ, I'm just going to try to read your text here while we're going here. So regarding tactical, has there been any discussion in Ontario with the RTF model? The idea of equipping all medics with ballistic gear permits them to work in the warm zone. Not that I'm aware of. I can't see that happening outside of places like maybe Toronto and Peel. But I don't know of any provincial initiative to do something like that. And then the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. There have been lots of mass shootings in the U.S., and mass shootings is defined as 3 or more deaths. Was a catalyst for first on scene, first in approach. And I remember when this happened, I was hosting a podcast at that time, and we interviewed a medic who is a senior manager in a service in Kentucky, and he was saying that they had, this is what I was talking about earlier, they had set up a procedure whereby if there was a shooting, for example, the first 2 or 3 police officers and the first medic arrived on scene would be the first to go in the building, tactical, trained, or otherwise. They would be the first to go in the building, because we know that everybody dies in the first 15 minutes in a shooting, in a school shooting. So they had to get in there, so hunt down the bad guy, and then begin initiating care. So it's an interesting concept. I don't know that there's how much value there is to bringing a medic in with you at that point, and it's certainly pretty dangerous to go in without any kind of protective gear. I think in their case the police just give the medic a bulletproof vest, and they just slap it on and in they go with some first aid supplies. And basically they're just bringing in pressure dressings and tourniquets, nothing else. So they have equipment for those types of events. I think we're going to start to see more and more of that in the not too distant future. You know, we've been lucky; we've had very few mass shootings here in Canada, but we're still really behind in that area there. So CBRN teams are pretty rare in this country. There are probably more hazmat teams than CBRN teams, and there's some crossover between hazmat and CBRN, but after the 9/11 incident, we started to look at CBRN training for medics for terrorist events, and we see them in some of the larger populated cities. These are multidisciplinary units, including forensic specialists and bomb technicians, and hazmat technicians as well, and paramedics. And the aim is to intervene, mitigate, neutralize, and an incident and save lives. And if I'm not mistaken, even EMAT, I don't think EMAT even goes into the warm zone. I think they stay in the cold zone and treat patients. That's interesting. Your CBRN does fire calls. That sort of makes sense too, because it's really, like I said, the crossover between CBRN and hazmat is pretty clear. So training happens both locally and nationally, and training includes things like characteristics and identification of weapons of mass destruction. Sorry if there's a lot of noise going on here. They're doing construction right outside my window. I should mention too, there's if you're interested in this kind of subject area, and it interests me for sure, but I just haven't had time to really delve into it. But there's a book called Toxico-Terrorism by Robin McPhee, and it's really a great book. Partly it's a great book because it covers off a lot of the CBRN stuff, but it's also written in a way that's easy to read. So it's quite a book. And I had the chance to talk to Dr. McPhee some years ago about her book, and really, really nice lady, and a huge, huge EMS advocate. So, yeah, so let me just read your text here. Also, there's an online course, BHLS. So there's a person. Okay. Yeah, I knew the advanced hazmat life support course was a face-to-face. I didn't. Yeah, in person. Okay. And yeah, I'd love to take the advanced hazmat life support course. That'd be great. I wasn't familiar with the basic one though. And guys, yeah. So the book name is Toxico, Toxico-Terrorism, by Dr. Robin McPhee, MCFEE. Yeah, and guys, feel free to jump on the mic, because it's really hard for me to look at the slides and look at the text coming up simultaneously. So just raise your hand and I'll give you the mic. There. All right. So train in PPE, obviously, and detection instruments, working with a multidisciplinary team. Can you guys hear that? Because it's really loud on my end. Okay, my apologies. This feels like they're drilling a hole right into my office here. Jeez. So Calgary was the first Canadian center to train paramedics to deal with hazmat incidents, and for chemicals in factories, transportation of dangerous goods, that sort of thing. And second such team in Canada was developed, interestingly enough, in Hastings Quinte EMS, Hastings County, and that was Chris Robertson who did that. So Chris has a military background, and he helped develop their hazmat team, which I think is so cool because it's such a small service. So they're pretty forward thinking. So hazmat teams, their role is to brief paramedic supervisors and staff on appropriate level of PPE and to inform them about what hazards are involved and what precautions need to be taken, and what symptoms to anticipate in patients, and treat patients exposed with a limited number of antidotes, to provide appropriate general and specific care, and collaborate assistance, collaborate with hazmat operations. And the training is involves a more thorough understanding of toxicology. I know a few people who've taken the advanced hazmat life support course, and it sounds like a really good course. But you want to take one probably through Sunnybrook, with a medical slant to it rather than the one that's offered sort of broadly for EMS and fire, because that'll have more of a fire slant to it and nowhere near as interesting from what I understand. So they're also trained in a limited range of antidotes, medical monitoring of responders, safety-related scene management. I won't say anything more about hazmat and CBRN medics, but bike medics, sorry, I had to include this. This is a really old photo of some of the medics I work with in Halton, both former ACP students of mine as well. And but when I say bike medics, I don't just mean bike medics, but I mean first response medics at certain events and so on and so forth. So there, we see bike medics and golf cart medics and a number of different services across the province, and they're usually deployed in areas where there's limited or restricted access by regular ambulances. So concerts and things of that nature, bike trails, congested outdoor markets, festivals, air shows, airport terminals, parades, outdoor concerts, and lots of other special events. The first flight terminals to incorporate bike medics were Vancouver and Calgary. I don't know if they have bike medic programs in any other province, but a buddy of mine was a bike medic at Vancouver Airport, and the way he described the system is that if there was a medical emergency, they would call 911, and the bike medics worked for the provincial paramedic service. So the dispatch would dispatch both an ambulance and dispatch the bike medic simultaneously. So the bike medics would respond, obviously, and be there first because they're there at the airport, ride their bikes around, and followed by the transport medics. Sounds like it was a very, really, really cool job. My buddy Daryl enjoyed it quite a bit anyway. In some areas, these teams are only deployed when needed. In other areas, they operate daily or in season. And it's really a cost-effective way to get first response paramedics to the scene quickly. Bicycles used are often mountain bikes or hybrids, and fairly sturdy bikes, and they may carry BLS and ALS equipment. I really should stop using the term BLS because BLS really doesn't really exist anymore. BLS, I think of BLS, I don't think of drugs. So O2, defibrillating units, limited number of drugs, variations on first responder vehicles include not just bicycles, but motorcycles, and we see these quite a bit in Europe and the UK. Haven't seen them here yet. ATVs, and when I worked Expo 86, we used golf carts, and we had paramedic nurse teams who rode around on golf carts, so it was quite fun. Interesting, we had 3 cardiac arrests that I'm aware of in Expo 86, and 2 of them were successfully resuscitated by security guards. The third one stayed dead. And so AEDs were a brand new thing with security guards at that time, and so we were all pretty excited that they were able to resuscitate these patients. Man, it's noisy in here. Golf carts, snow machines. You know, it's my personal belief that every golf course should have one golf cart dedicated to EMS. It should have a number 9 stretcher on it for when you can't get onto the course with your ambulance. That's just my opinion. Snow machines, etc. Here's some guys on a Segway. That would be fun. Although I think I prefer bicycle. Community paramedicine. I won't talk too much about community paramedicine because the variety of programs varies considerably from city to city. Now, have I talked to you guys about the Deep River Community Paramedic Program? Where they had 32 clients who were eligible for long-term care, and they decided to rather than putting them in long-term care, to get establish a community paramedic program. Did we talk about this before?
I think you talked about it last week, Rob.
Did I? Okay, good. Okay, we talked about the difference. So the cost of a multidisciplinary team with coordinated by the community paramedic was about $15,000 per client, and long-term care would be about $65,000 per client. That's where I see the value of community paramedicine. Excuse me. Critical care flight paramedics, I won't say anything more about that. You guys are all familiar with CCP programs and the air ambulance programs. Hopefully...
Was that you, Rob?
That was me. Yeah. You like that? These flight suits were so ugly.
That's awesome.
These flight suits were like a Dijon mustard color. So people used to harass us and call us the Poupon medics, or the Dijon duo. I love that picture because I was slim there. And great shot of Toronto too. But marine medics. I know York Region and Toronto both have marine medics. I prefer to call them aqua medics because it sounds more superhero-like. But marine medics oftentimes respond to boating incidents and people who are injured or ill on islands that are inaccessible by road. And did I ever think CCBs would be placed on land? Oh yeah, always, right from the beginning. I thought for sure they'd be on land. I'm surprised it's taken this long, and I'm surprised we still have so few land critical care paramedics. Although we have more now than we ever did before between Toronto and Orange. So marine units, they respond to waterfront sports and recreation. Oftentimes these are police and fire-based marine units, and adding paramedics, of course, offers a higher level of care. And do they do dive training in Toronto with the marine medics?
I'm not really sure what their scope is.
Yeah. Okay.
Except what Chris is saying, that they're PCP only.
Oh, they're PCP only, the marine units? Marine medics?
Yep.
Oh, that's interesting.
Your aquamedics.
Yeah. I shouldn't use that term nearly drowned because the World Health Organization has been asking healthcare providers around the world to stop using the terms drowning and near drowning. They prefer 3 terms. So drowning with survival, drowning with morbidity, and drowning with mortality. Lakeside cottagers, recreational boaters, experienced medical emergencies, police divers, etc. And they also help project a positive image of paramedics, which which is nice because people are often surprised to see Marine medics out in the water. Some of them have extensive aquatic and water rescue training. I'm not sure what the training is in Toronto and York region, but some subspecialties may include swiftwater and river rescue and ice rescue during the winter months. Is anyone here aware if Toronto or York has this sort of training? I see Chris is typing there.
I don't think Toronto does the water rescue because the fire's on the water as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same in York region. They leave it all to the fire department.
Yeah, what's interesting is I've been on a couple of water rescue situations, and the fire departments in both cases wore PFDs, and they weren't allowed to take the PFDs off. And in one incident, there was a car that a guy who committed suicide, he drove into Lake Ontario, and his car was upside down in the lake about 50 meters out, and his wheels were sticking out of the water. And the firefighters went in with their personal flotation devices on, and they were trying to dive down to open the door to see if anyone was in the car. And that made me really nervous because I thought, you know, and I said to the captain, I said, I have a real concern about what these guys are doing, because if they go down with a PFD and they get the door open and they get caught, they may not be able to get back out again with those things on. Are they not allowed to take the PFDs off? And he said no. So and I went to another water attempted rescue where there was a pond, a fairly large pond, and a guy had fallen out of his canoe and had drowned. And but we didn't know whether we were going to find him quickly and, you know, initiate a resuscitation. But it was the same situation. Fire crews were not allowed to take their PFDs off. Police were told they're not allowed to dive in. And I thought, well, we find this guy. Who the hell's diving in to get him? So my partner and I talked about this, and we were prepared to do it. And I spoke to the supervisor, and he said the supervisors actually get fined if we break the rules and dive into the water. And I heard the fine is $450. And I said, look, if we find this guy, someone's jumping in, police or us, and or both. But I'll happily pay your $450 fine if it's a supervisor who gets the fine. I got the sense from those two incidents that we are really not prepared to do water rescue. So Ottawa does water rescue too as well, eh? That's cool. Very cool. Heavy urban search and rescue. So the only HUSAR team that I'm aware of, I think, is in Toronto, and this is a multidisciplinary team of fire, medics, and police. And HUSAR incident is defined by Emergency Preparedness Canada as location of trapped persons and collapsed structures using dogs and sophisticated search equipment, heavy equipment, breach, shore, remove, lift structural components. So they'll even do things like, I'll give you an example. There was an incident where a guy was trying to fix the leak in his basement, and he dug a hole next to the house to get access to the leak, so the crack, excuse me, and the hole started to collapse around him, and they sent out the heavy urban search and rescue team because regular firefighters are not trained to do that sort of work. Treatment and removal of victims, securing a partially or completely collapsed structures, and what else? So teams are highly multidisciplinary. There's a considerable interagency cooperation and some cross-training, and they formally exist and are deployed in places like, Vancouver, we got there deployed there. Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, Halifax, and the province of Manitoba. So Toronto is the only place within our province that I'm aware of that has a HUSAR team. So training for heavy urban search and rescue typically includes technical rope rescue, emergency building shoring, confined space operations, hazmat operations, trench and evacuation rescue, basic canine first aid, in technical search operations, logistic functions, and operations, and understanding the incident management system. So there's some degree of cross-training that happens with the QSAR teams. In particular, paramedics might receive some special training in triage, although they're already trained in triage, managing multiple patients, recognizing and managing crush injuries. And crush injuries are not just simply things pressing up against your body, but crush injuries take hours, and it's usually people who've been in under collapsed buildings 12 to 24 hours where they have breakdown of muscle and rhabdomyolysis and release of potassium and all the sequelae associated with that type of muscle breakdown. That's it. Okay. Any questions about paramedic subspecialty? Any comments? Anything you want to add?
Rob, one area of subspecialty that you haven't covered that I'm very interested in, and we're slowly expanding in Sudbury is there sort of remote and wilderness medics. I know Renfrew is is really the leader in this. Are you familiar with their training and whether they have any expanded scope? Because our EVTs sort of take the lead on that, and they've been given wilderness training. We're starting to get some sort of PowerPointy stuff, though no real hands-on training yet. Yeah. But I've been very curious about whether their scope has been expanded in Renfrew or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar. I'm familiar with their search and rescue drone program, but I'm not familiar with their wilderness first aid. A buddy of mine teaches wilderness first aid. He's from Wisconsin, and it sounds like a really fantastic course and worth taking if you're interested, especially for guys like you, Charles, who live in an area where you're serving people in remote communities. Sounds like a fun course. I'd love to take it too. It'd have to be in the summer though, or the spring, not in the winter.
I'm actually an instructor, Rob.
What's that?
What's your friend? I'm actually an instructor.
Oh, are you? Greg Freeze?
Oh, okay, no, don't know. Do you know if he works for Wilderness Medical Society or Wilderness Medical Associates?
I do not know.
Oh, okay. Those are the two big names.
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe I'll add that to for next year's class. That's cool. Okay. I'll wrap up here.